Patreon poll Q&A. Ian, how do you access the CU podcast Patreon, and what do you get with there?
So you go on the World Wide Web and you surf on over to patreon.com.
You open up your Internet Explorer, Netscape Navigator.
Netscape, preferably.
You go into the URL bar,
http://www.patreon.com Shut up, Pat. www.patreon.com/CU podcast. And that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can kindly give us some money in exchange for services.
Wait a minute, that's not how Patreon works. It's not an exchange. They're patron of the arts. This isn't a cash transaction.
I thought it was for a quick, dry handy. Anyways.
They're not giving us money for stuff.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so you go to the patreon.com/CU podcast, and there, if you would wish to support us, if you'd like to support us, we have various tiers. $1 a month gets you access to my writings, which I'll be doing one this week, going in deeper into the Portland Retro Gaming Weekend I just had. You can also get access to the full video podcast.
You can.
And
all awkwardness.
And you'll also get access to a poll topic.
Yes, Ian.
A poll.
So in third place, if you can do a one-room mini arcade, what handful of games and pinball machines will go on it? 21%.
I think that one's getting retired.
For now. We tried it. Second place at 28%, is there an immaturity attached with young adults who become wealthy solely off of social media? Number one with the bullet, 51%. What high-priced retro games are most likely to crash in price in the future, Ian? We'll start with you.
I think a lot of them will be the ones that are high-priced but not particularly fun to play. Are we talking specific titles, or are we going for systems in general?
I would start with specific high-priced titles, but then maybe go system by system. But we talked in the past about how we don't think TurboGrafx would go down that much because of there isn't a lot of them out there.
Yeah, I don't think Turbo is going to drop significantly. I think we're going to see a lot of fluctuation in the coming 5 years. I don't think it's going to happen as quick as Pat does, but I do agree with him. I think Nintendo games in general, we're going to start seeing dropping prices on. I think the ones that we're going to see prices drop on the quickest are going to be games like Little Samson that... those are the types of titles that, for instance, at Portland Retro Gaming, I don't see moving on the show floor. I do see those in the cases. I saw one case that had like 2 or 3 of them in a case. And those aren't moving. And also, by the way, that's a really bad sales tactic. If you have,
you don't want to have multiple of something.
If you have multiple very rare games and you're putting high price tags on them, do not put 3 of them in there. No, because, you put 1 in there. Yes. Because then people are going to know that it's not worth $850 or whatever you put. I don't know what price.
I'm sorry, I missed what game you're talking about. You're talking about Little Samson?
Little Samson.
Of course.
You don't.
The game du jour.
Yeah, you don't put... It immediately makes whatever high price tag you see on there look absolutely phony and unreasonable.
Because it's not as rare as you think.
Because you have 3 copies of it. So I do think, I've always thought that Little Samson will absolutely be one that goes down in value very quickly.
Oh, yes.
I think that's probably going to be one of the first and biggest hit ones. As soon as we talked about this question last night, that was my answer. I think Little Samson is going to... It's not going to become cheap, but that one is going to have hundreds shaved off of it.
Yeah, Little Samson, I was arguing with Ian, or not Ian, we were having a discussion before the guidebook about, is this even a rare game?
Yes, I do think it's rare. I don't think it is.
I think it's just very uncommon. I see less of so many other... I see a hell of a lot less bases loaded 4s than I see Little Samson.
I see bases loaded 4 coming into the store 2 or 3 times a year. I've seen 1 Little Samson come into the store. Little Samson is rare. From where I sit,
or are people just holding on to it more than a base loaded 4 because it's a sports game? I go to conventions. I see a lot more Little Samsons for sale than base loaded 4.
Of course you see them in conventions. Because people want to show them off at conventions.
But bases loaded 4 is a hard to find game. You should be showing off a game like that. Or a Kid Clown. Kid Clown's harder to find than Little Samson to me.
People want to show off what they have that they think is expensive and impressive. I think Little Samson counts as rare. Not the rarest,
All
not
right.
by any means.
Okay,
But it's
I would
definitely-
argue at any point in time in the past 10 years, you go on eBay and search for Base Loaded 4 or Kid Clown versus Little Samson, there's going to be a hell of a lot less than those.
I definitely
And
don't
that's how-
think it's uncommon. I would call it rare. I'm not arguing. I'm not saying it's the rarest game
Very
in the world.
uncommon, not uncommon.
No.
It's as uncommon as Chiller is. You don't see it. You know what I mean?
It's rarer than that. I'm going to say firmly it's rare, but it's not the rarest game on the system. And I certainly do think it's going to be one of the games that loses some. It's going to be a game that drops in price the most.
What do you think it'll drop to, like where Jetsons is? Like it'll be like a couple hundred or whatever. What's Jetsons going to a certain?
I'm just gonna say it's gonna drop to $450.
So like half stuff like that in Dinosaur Peak might just have the value
Sure.
over time. When you look at,
I think it'll lose more value than Dinosaur Peak. I think it's more common than Dinosaur Peak.
probably.
I'll say that.
In terms of like heavy hitters, I would think. I mean, I can go back to Steam Events. Steam Events is one of those games that it's really going to just hinge upon how many completionist collectors are going to be around 10 and 20 years from now. There's still going to be people that need that game. Games like that, they need to complete their set. The games that are trash and you wipe your ass with, but you need them to complete the set. Are those the games that all of a sudden people are going to be like, I don't need a set anymore? So you have to then sell the game you spent $10,000 on and try to find someone else to complete their set 10 years from now. And I don't think they're going to be out there at that point. There might be a couple, but I think at that point people are going to be either they found it or they moved on. You know, how patient are these people? They're going to wait 15, 20 years to pay, you know, to get a discount rate on a game like that. Besides me, of course. Like if I didn't have Steam Events 10 years from now, and it's only $1,000 now. Yeah, I'll buy it. But I'm not paying $2,000 off. I'm gonna pay $8,000. No, I don't care. Still,
Sure.
like I'm still priced out. So at what point do those games re-enter the market, and where do they stop at? And that's at the Steam Events. That's the best example because that game is trash. You know, but even a game like Hero Toma or Trograph's probably a bad example, but you know what I'm saying, like a Musha, things like that. Like, will those games come down in price because the allure of having the complete Genesis set wears off? You know,
I think there's a chance for certain games like Musha, though, and maybe, like I said, that one's an anomaly. I think certain games that have always had a hardcore following, say shooters, for instance. I mean, all the way back to the late '80s to now. I think popular genre games have the best chance at keeping value over time.
when you say popular, ones that didn't make $1 million of, but they're popular that people know about it.
I mean, like a popular genre.
A popular genre.
Games in a popular genre. Say like shooters.
Okay.
Shooter collectors are crazy. Shooters are not linked to a certain system. So say if you like shooters, you're not collecting shooters for a certain system. You're collecting shooters in general. So say something like a Radiant Silver Gun has been $200 for like 14 years and almost never, anything else. Sapphire has been $500 for almost forever. Things like that, because they're part of a popular subgenre that people are very hardcore about. I think those games have a chance to retain their value for longer because they're not necessarily so hard tied to the fickle interests of entire system collectors. Do you get what I'm saying?
So maybe a better example would be something like Crusader of Senti, where it's a game that, it's hard to find. Once you got a much more Genesis completionists out there, the game starts soaring in value. But that may be a game people want to go back and play on its surface versus like a Musha. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yes, I'm saying like if a game is good and someone really enjoys a genre, those games are likely to keep their value for longer because they appeal to people outside of a system collector.
Sure.
As opposed to someone who's just collecting for a system and eventually they're going to get tired of that. So it's not something they need to complete a set. It's something they want because they like a genre. So those are the games that are going to keep their value where, yes, you're right. Something like a Stadium Events or a Little Samson.
Which is still a good game.
It's a good game, but yeah, that's something that's going to fall to the wayside.
I would say that any of the non-marquee titles that are rare, that people that aren't brought up in any sort of natural or casual conversation when it comes to video games,
Swordmaster,
which is a decent game, but those are the games that will plummet in value as we get older and older. And then it could be surprisingly that when you think about, oh, Super Mario Brothers 3, 50 years from now, that might have some sort of value still, because that'll be a game people still fondly remember, and Nintendo will still be around. I think that'll be the shift. And I think most people agree with that sort of standpoint, that is going to be the more likely scenario.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
Where rarity will matter, and because it happened with comics. There's a hell of a lot of comics that are rare from the 40s and 50s that are a lot harder to find than superhero comics or popular, but it doesn't matter. People don't want them, you know.
People will misinterpret rarity and popularity. I mean, people will still pay a decent amount of money for a really nice copy of the Beatles' White Album, and it's not like there weren't any copies of the Beatles' White Album.
Sure.
Whereas, you know, significantly less printed albums of good music from that era will go for $5 in a bin.
You know what's going to plummet in price? Those Panesian games up there will plummet. No one's going to give a shit about those Panesian games 20 years from now. That'll be a bad decision for me as the last games I got. Hopefully that Caltron 6-in-1. The Myriad 6-in-1. It's an oddity. That was not at the NES Museum. I teased John Hancock about that. John Hancock.
There weren't any unlicensed ones.
No, there were. The unlicensed were on one shelf laid out by publisher. It was cool. You had all the color games in a row.
Okay. I thought they were only claiming a complete license.
No, they had everything.
Oh, okay.
They had everything there. Didn't have the Myriad. That's a Caltron variant. So that's the stuff where it's like weirdly rare, but no one gives a shit about it. Which is like anything though. There's baseball cards a hell of a lot rarer than Onus Wagner baseball card.
Oh yeah.
But he's a Hall of Famer. There's a story behind it. That's why it goes for millions of dollars. The same sort of deal happens here. So anyway, I go back to the story about the piano rolls. My grandfather had a lot of piano rolls that are probably really, really hard to find, but no one gives a shit about them. 80 years later. So all right.